All right, here we are. Hello, everybody. This is Between Two Teachers. We talk about current educational issues far and wide. And today's Friday, June 17th, and my name is Consuelo Lara.
And I'm Madeline Cronenberg. And as always, we will begin today with our land acknowledgement. We pause to acknowledge that we are gathered on the ancestral territory of Huichin, part of the unceded land of the Chochenyo and Karken speaking Muwekma Ohlone people. We remember their continued connection to this region, give thanks to them for allowing us to live, work, learn, and pray on their traditional homeland, and offer our respect to their elders and all Ohlone people of the past and present. And I do want to speak a bit about the Ohlone people. We have just recorded an episode of the meeting of the Concilio Latino, which we're both very involved in as well, and had a presentation from the Muwekma Ohlone people themselves, who are working hard to get recognized as a tribe by the federal government. And it's a very complicated issue, but it's a really important issue to understand what's happened to the Muwekma people. And I'm going to they've given us a lot of resources. I'm going to put a link to those resources. I put them on a Google Drive, so anybody who is interested can see and take a look at them and understand the big history of what happened here in the Bay Area to our Native people. And there are steps that can be taken. There was an opportunity to move something forward in the Senate. That hasn't happened, so there is still work to be done to do political advocacy for this movement. And the other thing is there's curriculum. We open, as I just did, with a land acknowledgement, and that's just step number one. First thing you have to do is say, yes, this is true. There is a necessity to recognize where we have come from. And then there have to be all the steps you need to take to educate our children about where we are today and what kind of steps we need to take to make communities whole. So there's this whole issue around, we've talked about Black reparations. There's an issue here around Native American reparations. And it's important to understand the story, which is very little understood right now.
Yeah, it was a very rich presentation. There's so much rich history. The heroes, the involvement in, the military, some of them. So, and then just the activism, the pushback, trying to sue the government for these injustices. I mean, the activism is there. And all of that, the sealing of documents. Oh my gosh, there's just so much.
There is a tremendous amount, and we need to understand it. We need to understand it, and there certainly are opportunities. There's, as what was shared with us, there have been museum exhibits, but we need more than a traveling exhibit. We need to, first of all, have all of the children in the Bay Area understand their links, the history that this land has to the Native population, to our Native population. So there are lots of steps to be taken here, and we can think about them and give you an update every week when we do the land acknowledgement, because I don't want the land acknowledgement to just be words.
That's right. That's right. And we also talked about how those mission projects are not appropriate at this point.
Right, and they were removed from the standards in 2016. I don't want to. They are no longer in the state of California standards, which doesn't mean that it reached the ears of every person who is a fourth grade teacher, right? But the truth is they are not what the system that is supported right now in California. California has a different set of standards and does look at the missions as places of conflict and places that really missionized, the term that the Dr. Leventhal used earlier.
Yeah,
That missionized a whole community of people who are already living here.
yes, yes.
So so look to us to continue to do that, to post. We'll be posting it on Facebook and asking you to join groups, write letters, sign petitions, and be active with your own personal networks around supporting the Muwekma Ohlone people.
Absolutely.
Then there's what's going on nationally, and really what I wanted, the one interesting thing that's happened nationally is that the federal government has started a new group. What's the name of it here? Called, basically it's a response to, here it is, to a lot of the parent activism that's happened around really after the pandemic. It has to do with masking, activism around vaccines, and then also just parent activism that has exploded also into the area of curriculum, banned books, critical race theory. All of those things have activated parent groups. So the Department of Education, U.S. Department of Education, historically had not had an outreach to families as they are now creating. So they have now created, this week, they created a National Parents and Families Engagement Council to help ensure recovery efforts and to meet students' needs. And so what they wanted to be able to do is meet with these already formed groups of parents and community to get input from them, as opposed to what was happening, which was that they were on the outside looking in. They didn't have any input or access to these groups. And that's the way it works in government. You have to form something in order to have that. So the groups that are included as of right now are the Council of Parent Attorneys and Advocates, which is an interesting name for a group just by itself. So I'm not sure who they are. Fathers Incorporated, Generations United, Girls Inc., the League of United, LULAC, the League of United Latin American Citizens, MOCA Moms, National Association of Family, School, and Community Engagement, National Action Network, National Military Family Association, National Parent Teachers Association, National Parents Union, National Center for Parent Leadership, Advocacy, and Community Empowerment, United Parent Teachers Action Network, and Unidos US. So that's just something to know, that nationally that has bubbled up. And certainly we've seen it politically, where different groups have parent groups have become very politicized in the last year. And up until now, the federal government had not really been present there, but they are now.
Good.
Yeah, so that there's that. And then the thing I wanted to bring up next was locally, we're working on a strategic, and we're not the only ones. There are many districts that are working on a strategic plan. And strategic plans are really, interesting documents, because they give you the opportunity to do outreach into the community and see what kind of perspectives community members and teachers have, and students. However, what you really need to do is take a look at where you've come from in your strategic plan. And in our district, and as most districts, they already had one. And you could look at seeing how that one worked, how it was implemented, and what the next steps should be on the one that you have. Or you can hire a consulting firm and start from scratch. which is a more popular choice because it's easier to do. And especially if the team at the top is a new team who've come from outside the district. It's much easier to do because then you bring in a consulting team that's also from outside the district.
Yeah, and it's just ignoring the resources that are already there, the hard work that was already done. And, you know, you can build on that and push it forward even faster, but ignoring that and starting all over again just sets us back, really.
It's not as the problem, the biggest problem is that people who've been here any length of time said, will see that, well, you're doing that again.
Yeah.
Right? You did one 5 years ago, you'll do this one now, you'll do a different one 5 years from now, and there's somebody else in charge.
Yeah.
Right? And because there is such a change, because of the way school districts work and the fact that leadership at the top of school districts does tend to change, and it's frequent that they bring someone in from outside to be a leader rather than to promote from within. That's what happens. Right? The most successful school districts, one thing that many of the most successful school districts have in common is stability of leadership.
Yes.
Right? Remember Long Beach? Long Beach is a
Yes.
great example, and they had kept their superintendent for, I don't know, 12 years, 15 years.
Yep. They had collaboration, they had trust, they had communication.
And their board, both of them.
And the board.
Right, the board and the superintendent, and they were able to create, they moved together, and they weren't bringing in new people all the time, right? They were building their own people, they were building their own bench.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
And but that's not everybody's strategy. And so when you're now looking at strategic plans, one of the things that people are looking at is the fact that California is going to be putting a lot of money into community schools.
Yes, yes. And the community school is not a new concept, been around for many, many years.
Yep.
There's now more money for it. It's been recognized, I think, as a result, you know, the pandemic and the emphasis on social emotional wellness, and how can we have these wraparound services for our communities, because there's so much that, you know, we have to provide. So the community schools really are that, and there's certain pillars to that. One of them, strong one being, is family and community partnerships, community engagement, and community support services. So it really is about reaching out to the community. That's why they're community schools, and bringing in, you know, what we already provide, for instance, adult ed classes and things like that. So there is money for that. And also our unions have become very involved with this process as well. So they're expanding, and this is something to watch very closely as they grow. I taught at a community school for many, many years. It is wonderful. So if it's done right and it's inclusive and collaborative, it can have wonderful effects.
And it has to be resourced. This is the thing. You have to put the resources in. You can't just call it that and say, and now we're all going to do this outreach. You have to pay people and who have the job description to do it. And as we mentioned with the adult ed part, one of the things that adult ed, at least certainly in West Contra Costa, had been really successful at was holding community classes in our schools for parents of who needed to learn English. Yes. Right. And this in our district, there's many districts, the greatest number of those non-English speaking parents were Spanish speaking. And many of those young parents also needed childcare during that. And that was provided. You had childcare provided during the class where mom would come in and learn English, and she would be welcomed in the school that her children are in, and be able to become part of that community. It was the perfect example of community schools. Now, it also completely served equity because it met their needs where they are. Yes. Not every school needed to have this, because not every school had the population of parents who really could benefit from it. But for the schools that did, it made a world of difference to the parents who participated.
Yeah.
And that's like, I think, could be the centerpiece of starting your community schools, because your community schools has to start with your parent community, and the young parents who don't speak English are the ones who we really can serve.
Exactly, exactly. And so many classes, we need the ESL, we need citizenship classes, we need GED classes, we need parenting classes, job training. I mean, there's just so much that our community needs. And that's
Right. And it doesn't all have to be done. And there are reasons for us why it doesn't have to be done at the community college. I mean, for one thing, the community college is not nearby like your community school is. And if you're a young mom who would like to also learn a skill as well as a new language, really you want to do that where you've just taken your kindergartner to school.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So
That's
I'm
so
going to watch that and have more updates on the development of our community schools.
yes, yeah, and our strategic plan. So as the strategic planning process is now coming to the next stage where they're actually going to produce it, they'll produce the strategic plan, they'll produce a mission statement and a vision statement and a motto, and we'll see what direction they were going to go in. Because with all of that, at the same time, what you have to do is invest.
Yes, yes.
Right. And if you are at the same time talking about how you're going to have to cut back because you have declining enrollment and you have all of these pressures on your budget, then you have to be honest about whether or not how that strategic plan is going to work together and complement your budget, right?
Yes.
That's really where the community has to listen carefully to what the district, and in this case, I think it's very much is the superintendent's vision, where it's going to go.
Yes, absolutely.
We'll see.
All right.
We will see. And now you have had great success with, I want to talk a little bit about the incredible work that's been done around safety.
Yes.
Because I don't want to forget the children of Uvalde and all of the children in America who are victims of gun violence.
Yeah. I don't know if I shared this before, but we did when I taught at Helms, and we did this, the old Helms, which is a nightmare. And there was a lot of gang activity at the time. It was a few years back, where we had a survey of the kids telling us where they felt the most safe and the least safe, including their neighborhood and walking to and from school. They always felt unsafe there. There were certain areas in the school they did not feel safe, so that we knew places to keep, where to put supervision. And so it was really useful. And the number one place where the kids felt safe was in our classrooms. And I remember feeling so proud of that, because as a teacher, that's your number one thing. You want to protect your students. That you always want to do that. And now to be in this bizarre place where active shooters in my classroom, it's not safe. It's more than I could deal with sometimes. I can't wrap my head around it. So I'm on the Contra Costa County Board of Education, and we brought forth a resolution in support of school safety to protect our children and our staff. And it passed unanimously at our last board meeting. I'm just thrilled about it. It is a very collaborative resolution, because it states that the board will support the superintendent's continuing activities around, for instance, updating all the site safety plans, the handbooks, training in, because that is all, lots of it is being done, but to continue in supporting that. Also working with city and county agencies to inform parents about how to safely store firearms. So many of these happen because the firearms are just out accessible to young children, loaded. So there needs to be education about that. I think there's even a Senate bill that's pending. Also that our board could establish a safety committee, which could involve then parents and students and even law enforcement to review what we're doing and make recommendations. So that's a possibility. And then to continue the emergency campus safety training for including but not limited to active shooter situations and other violent or threatening activities. So,
Right.
and then also a part of it is to support, to urge Congress, state and federal legislation for funding about gun violence research and passing common sense gun control laws, please. And fundings for programs about harassment, bullying, discrimination, and violence. I think, isn't it Sandy Hook has Foundation has a lot of those programs. And then funding for more counselors, nurses, psychologists, and social workers. So it's a wonderful resolution and I'm very proud of it. And I'm going to be sending it now to as many county districts as I can, and hopefully they can put something forward that's similar. What I like is when a parent can say to me or ask me, well, what are you doing? You know, how is my child going to be safe in these schools? I can say, here's what we're doing and we'll continue to do to expand and always put the safety number one. So this is something I
am so excited about it. I think that the important thing, I mean, people think, well, you know, the resolutions are, I passed a resolution to honor a group for the month and that they're not actionable. But this is an actionable resolution, right? And the key action is you're going to have, when you create a committee, the thing about a committee is the committee is the first step to taking action, where somebody can come and say, I need whatever it is. We want additional resources on campus because for this specific reason, we feel unsafe. We find that a classroom needs a classroom or a group of students really need more structure and support. Well, what are the strategies around being able to give that? And those are safety issues, which are separate from academic issues, right? But if your safety issues are not addressed, you're not going to be able to address your academic issues. People who are not comfortable, people who feel anxious and afraid are not in a position to be able to learn.
Right.
They're just not. And that's why it's an important part of what we now have to do in this day and age. And there is a bill that I've learned about today from our own state senator Skinner, which I think is a really interesting one. And that is to require all gun owners to have liability insurance, just like car owners have to have insurance, because they operate something that can be very dangerous. Well, certainly guns are very dangerous.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good one.
It is,
isn't she? So
that's yes.
Cool.
Yes.
Another thing we talked about was the charter school, you know, by law, board can appoint a representative on the governing board of charter school. And so we moved ahead on that, our charter committee, and we had a timeline and a process, and we got half of it passed. And so that's an ongoing process that we're working on at the county level. And I just want to say that I personally want to start having Zoom meetings as a county board trustee, conversations with, you know, trustee Laura. So look for that coming soon, like in August. I hope to have that before and after our board meetings. So I listen to the constituents, and I'm taking a example from trustee Smith Folds and Gonzalez Hoy from West Contra Costa, who do a wonderful job of listening to constituents. And I think that's a good example. So I'm going to be doing that as well. So yeah.
That is really one of the gifts of Zoom, is that people can do this now. And there still certainly are electeds who will say, you know, come meet me for lunch or for coffee. I'm at a certain place for coffee every Thursday morning. Yeah. Or I know electeds who say, come meet me at a bar. and I'm at a bar every Friday afternoon. But it doesn't matter where you're going to give yourself the access. But the idea is, I think, is a wonderful idea to give access, and Zoom really makes it so much easier for folks.
It's
It
wonderful.
really does. So I'm excited that you're going to do that.
Yeah.
The other little things I just wanted to point out a couple of things. Best practice, one that was pointed out to me in the last few weeks is a really easy one that happens around graduation time, and that is to have the graduates in their caps and gowns go back to their elementary schools and and be applauded by the elementary school students, and have the elementary school students see how far they can go.
Yeah. That's
Easy thing to do, makes tons of sense to do it.
Yeah.
Another one is that the National School Board Association has something called a Magna Award, and I'm going to put a link to their page. And what they do is they receive nominations from all over the country about a huge variety of best practices, and then they put out videos on what the best practices were and how they were successful, and they give out awards to school districts who've put those best practices forth in smaller districts, middle-sized districts, and larger districts. But they really are worth looking at. There are lots of them. There are years of them that are on their websites, and I think they're overlooked by most people. Don't know that exists, but it does, and it's really worth taking a look at the best practices that are provided on the Magna Award website. And the other thing I did want to just do a couple of updates. Two of them. Well, there are two with respect to the election, right? The election, when we talked last week, not everything had been settled, but now we know that Alameda County will have a brand new county superintendent, Ms. Castro, who has defeated Ms. Monroe. So Ms. Castro is coming in as the new superintendent. And for our state superintendent, it now looks like Mr. Thurman will be in a runoff with Lance Ray Christensen, who is supported by Reopen California Schools. It comes from that parent group, the Jarvis taxpayers, and Reform California. So those are his biggest supporters. And as of right now, he's the person who has the second highest amount of votes. And Mr. Thurman he got 46%, but the rest is split up among this other group. The other thing I wanted to do was give, where is it? Yeah, here it is, a shout out. So my shout out is to our favorite adult education leaders. Ken Ryan, president of the Adult Education Association in West Contra Costa, and Kristen Persley, who's the vice president, both of whom are extraordinary teachers in adult ed, and both of whom we mentioned last week had received termination notices, which turned out to have been a mistake.
Clerical error.
And have been rescinded. So they are back in their classroom. They're back negotiating a contract, which is taking 4 years to negotiate, something else that needs to be really addressed. But they are back in the saddle as teachers. So I really want to support them and acknowledge all the work they've done for so many years. And it's really unfortunate that this mistake happened. As it did.
Yeah, they're wonderful. Congratulations to them for winning that. And there's so many issues. That's just one tip of the iceberg of the issues for adult ed. Yes, we'll bring those.
True. It's true. So we will talk more about that. We're so glad you had a chance to stay and hear us today. I hope you work and follow the links to supporting the Muwekma Ohlone people, because they really do need our support. We need to, the same as the gun legislation. We can't just drop it and make believe it's been solved, because nothing has been solved yet. Nothing.
All right.
So until next time.
Thank you
Bye-bye.
so much. Bye.